Hello and welcome to the program. I am Oyi Adekunle. Recently, the Nigeria Labour Congress (NLC) and affiliate members staged a massive protest in some states of the Federation to kick against proposed plans to move the minimum wage from the exclusive legislative list to the concurrent. Now, if passed, the bill, which was sponsored by the Kaduna lawmaker Mohammed Dati, will allow states to take charge of regulating minimum wage instead of the federal government. So it means it gives state governments power to negotiate with the NLC to determine how much civil servants will be paid in each state. Now, of course, the organized labor has kicked against this and has warned the National Assembly against making moves that will cause more hardship for Nigerian workers amid the economic challenges ushered in by the coronavirus pandemic. But joining me now to talk more on the concerns of the Nigeria Labour Congress is AMAECHI, the Deputy President of the NLC. Of course, he joins us from another part of Lagos. Comrade, thank you very much for joining us on Analysis. Now, what exactly is the fear, or should I say concerns now, that the organized labor have concerning the decentralization of the minimum wage?
I think we have continued to actually make our point clear because, as a matter of fact, the issue of minimum wage is a matter of workers' rights, and therefore it has to be treated centrally. The issue of minimum wage is not a matter to be treated in isolation. You recall that this law was enacted far back 40 years ago, and it has been a practice that has kept mutual respect for both employer and employee at the work site. So when we talk about removal of issues of wage from the exclusive list, you have attempted to impose a threat in the industry, because people talk and they make reference to state governors, they make reference to government. Nobody has actually made reference to the private sector. These are drivers of businesses aimed at making profit at the detriment of employees. So if you don't have a law that actually cares for the remuneration of workers, then a nation is already tending to intimidate the workforce, because this is a global standard. We are not talking about a local practice of what an employer wishes to pay. We're talking about consideration put in place by law, under which 30,000 was actually mutually negotiated to be the minimum. So for us, we still believe that it's unacceptable, and we are not afraid, but our concern remains that this must not allow to see the light of the day, because it's anti-people, it's barbaric. This is for me, it's a policy that already intended to harm the people, and collectively we should resist it, because the issue of wage is about the right to earning, having put in your best in the place of work. It's not at the discretion of the employer to pay wage.
Some states governments, some states have actually said that that 30,000 naira is not sustainable. And to be fair, let's take a look at a state like Lagos, for instance, now, and compare with, say, Taraba. They are actually not on the same revenue level. So will it be fair to ask both states to pay the same amount as minimum wage? There are states that can actually afford more than that 30,000 naira we're talking about.
So the question now, what is unfair here is state like Lagos, state like Rivers State, Akwa Ibom, and any other state that eventually will do better should not stick to 30,000 as a minimum wage. It will be very shameful that states so mentioned will be competing with Taraba State in the torso of who should pay 30,000. So Taraba and any other state that are falling within these categories of fear of inability to pay, they are saying so because their colleagues as governors have not moved up. There's no governor that can come out openly to tell his people that 30,000 as a wage is too much for a worker. 1,000 naira per day. This is unacceptable. No governor can do so. Until today, they have not said so. No governor has said he's unable to pay 30,000. Rather, they will be telling you the other state is richer than my state. The question is, a rich state, a a rich state cannot pay 30,000. Because you have to ask yourself, a driver to a governor is like a driver anywhere in Nigeria. A cook to a governor are like cooks you find in companies. So do we have anybody in government house working for this government we are referring to, including Taraba? The governor of Taraba now is cooks and any other artisans, including the barber that barb his head. Do they receive 30,000? The answer is no. So who is this child that has no father or mother, or rather a voice, that we are trying to mortgage into saying a governor should not tell us what he's able to pay? Nobody is going to tolerate that, because these are just calculated action to undermine the right of workers and to see to it that people who are actually should be given a fair wage to drive the program of state. So we are looking at state paying above the minimum wage, and nobody with his red sense we advocate to pay less than 30,000. We want to see that governor come to address workers of his state that 30,000 is a living wage. Everybody has quarreled on even 30,000 that cannot take work anywhere. So anybody talking less of it is criminal, because it means you want to actually hype the case of insecurity. Anytime you want to take a decision, you want to make a law, you want to make a policy, you must look at implications. Today now, every part of Nigeria is suffering from insecurity. And where people have blamed it on high rate of unemployment, and now you want to also send the people working to the streets by declaring them underemployment, by paying what is not waged to them as salary. For us, government should be sensitive to see how they can actually run away from some of these hazardous advice that come from people who just deliberately want to see how they take all that belongs to Nigeria to themselves. Nobody has quarreled with governors over security vote. Nobody has quarreled with all the allowances paid to lawmakers or every part of this nation. They collect this money collectively. Nobody has talked about inability to pay. When you talk about councillors all over Nigeria, they receive the same salaries. Governor all over Nigeria receive the same salary. Why is the governor of Taraba State receiving the same salary with the governor, the Lagos State governor? Why has he not brought his own down?
I understand your point perfectly, Mr. ASUGWUNI. Let's also now look at this issue of payroll fraud and how it actually affects us as a country. In the past, we've seen several thousands of ghost workers have been uncovered in different states. Now, with so many ghost workers in the public service, should we be surprised that some governments are complaining about not being able to pay minimum wage?
Yes, that is part of the criminal aspect that every governor should ensure that they put their torchlight to actually know who are these workers. When you hear some governor tell you their wage bill per month, you begin to wonder, where are the workers?
Exactly.
What are they doing for the state? Because if you have a workforce that are not productive, then we blame the employer. Because every worker is ready and willing to work. Tools for work must be made available by the employer. And the work to do must be made available by the employer. You see these governors, they have sections, they have departments, they have ministries that will carry out operations that will promote the state. You will still see these governors look for their friends to engage a consultant where they will pay big amount of money and possibly only God knows what happened. So how do you engage consultants where you already have superior officers in that field who are professionals to get those jobs done without pay? Because they're already on payroll. But you see this government, they pay salary to workers and they hire workers to do the work of their workers. It's very unwise, very unproductive, and it looks shameful, because that is a problem that every succeeding governor have continued to raise. So for us, they should check the list. The workers that are not visible. Biometrica, you can actually truly know the real workers by their age, true record. And when you actualize this number, you will know the actual working force that is actually making progress for the state. So we don't keep this complaint. Time without number, we'll continue to mention the issue of wage bill. Because one thing we have also learned from some progressive governor is that the 30,000 is actually too small. But that the wage bill itself is becoming too big for them to bear. The question is, who are your workers? Have you done the investigation? They have to carry out investigation to actually know who are these workers that are working and who are these ones that are not in service, and one way or the other, salary is still going out in their name. A governor that believes in discipline, a governor that believes in rule of law must actually order a forensic audit in order to ensure that workers that are not workers are meant to be excluded from the payroll of the state. For us, those are the only way you can minimize, reduce spending in order to get workers' wage. Workers' wage all over the world is considered as a priority. They are on a priority list. And one thing that you must know, when we talk about wage determination covers the entire nation, so that you don't leave any sector to suffer it. Where are the factory workers in the program and the proposal of the proposed bill we want to push? Where are the workers in the hotel industry? Where are the workers in the construction industry? Where are the workers all over Nigeria, even in the oil and gas sector? Where do you put them? When you allow governor to determine salary, can a governor determine the salary of a private employer? The answer is no. So by so doing, you will eliminate the right of a worker to collective bargaining, which certainly ILO forbid. And the law of Nigeria have domesticated some of these international conventions. They have laws of this country that we must never allow for anybody to subvert them. So in continuing to promote decent work, we must ensure that minimum wage issues remain on this executive legislative list, so that nobody take laws into his hand. We should rather advocate punishment to those employers who we say they lack ability to comply with the laws of Nigeria. They should rather make a bill that will compel governors to do the lawful and not the otherwise, because labor will not bend. As a matter of fact, this is a one straight issue that requires straight approach. And we are ready to
Honorable
engage.
Mohammed Dati, that the lawmaker who sponsored the bill has said that, this is beyond protest, and the NLC has to come forward with its argument during a public hearing of the bill. Now, is the Labour ready for that?
Of course. As a matter of fact, the honorable that presented that bill certainly is looming in confusion now, because he now understands that the argument he pushed forward can no longer hold water, because they were only talking about abilities of governor. They never thought of the private sector. So the engagement that has to do with public hearing and any other legitimate processes, those are what we advocate. You cannot shave my hair on my behalf without me present. So they went ahead to pass the first reading, second reading, without considering that we're talking about workers' wage. Where are the workers? To tell us why we must not proceed to what we're doing. And we have told them, we have written to the National Assembly, they'll be having a special engagement with the leadership of the House to see how they can get better understanding of what labor is talking
very
about.
Quickly now, I'm sorry I have to cut you here, but very quickly now, one thing we know that Nigerians are also waiting to get assurances from the NLC on will be the talks about a possibility of increased price of petrol. We know that there are ongoing talks between the Labour and federal government. How far has that talks gone?
Yes, the talk is still on. As a matter of fact, the last meeting was adjourned till April, and as far as we are concerned, up to this moment, the agreement reached with federal government is that there shall be no increment until we find solution to the matter in question. So for us, nothing otherwise will happen, and if otherwise happen, Labour will also.
But do you think it's sustainable for the government to keep paying fuel subsidy over 700 billion naira yearly when we can actually divert this to other infrastructural projects? Do you think it's sustainable?
It's not about sustainability, it's about the sincerity of government. Because over time, take it from 1999 to date, we have continued to hear the same story from one government to another. Nobody has been able to put refinery to work. So how will you trust anything that any government will tell you? So for us, it's sustainable to do what is right until you fix that which will impose punishment on Nigerians. Don't forget, if they don't pay what they call subsidy or palliative to cushion the effect of PMS, this is a product that you want to base the regulation on importation. And if we allow that to stand, it means the fuel price will continue to go up on daily basis. Any day you see reaction from dollar exchange rate, you will certainly find it in the market. And don't forget, in Nigeria, once price of PMS increases, transportation will increase, it will affect the cost of goods and services, and who pays? The workers and Nigerians that have done nothing to governance will eventually suffer the inability of government. So we believe that government will do the needful in ensuring that refineries are working. When this is put in place, some of these foreign charges that actually take this our PMS price upward would have been cut off. And then when you produce locally, you consider your people before you export. At that point, we are not selling at the international market anymore. It becomes our goods. So for us, we still believe government can deregulate only when they are put refineries to work in such a way that the regulation will be based on local-made PMS. At that point, Nigerians will appreciate when they spend money that indeed is actually going to the country, not to be paying money to service debt and take more debt, and you see people turning back front, doing nothing, and they keep us busy talking. This is not the right way to go. For us, they must change the strategy to get it right. Comrade
AMAECHI ASUGWUNI, the Deputy President of the Nigeria Labour Congress, so thank you very much for speaking to us on this very important matter on analysis. Thank you so much for your time. We'll take a short break here, and when we return, we'll get another angle to this discussion. Please stay with us. Welcome back, and let's now get another perspective to this minimum wage debate. Now I'm being joined on the program by Professor Ken Ife, an economist who of course joins us from Abuja via Skype. Thank you very much, Prof, for joining us on the program. Now, what's your own take on the decentralization of minimum wage, and why would you think that the Nigerian Labour Congress will be kicking against it so hard?
The concept of decentralization, or in other words, delisting minimum wage from exclusive list, bringing it to concurrent list, it's not a bad idea. But the thing, you cannot have it midstream. You are actually in the midstream of concluding or even having concluded the implementation of a minimum wage. So you cannot, in the middle of this negotiation, change the whole equation. Let's implement this and then bring in the agenda of delisting it from federal exclusive list and bring it to concurrent going forward. I think it's unfair to bring it in at this very, very moment, but let's wait until we finish implementing this.
Okay, so for instance, if the government had waited and decentralization generally, what do you think would be the implication, or what does it mean for states now and also for workers in the country?
Don't forget that this thing is minimum. It's not, the states can decide to pay more than that. Some states can pay 50,000 instead of 30,000. Some may pay 40. So it's all, they pay as much as they can carry. But of course, the states also need to be aware that you have to carry the size of the bureaucracy or what they call the cost of governance that you are able to carry. That means a trade-off between the number of people in your employment, what the productivity of those in employment, and how much you are able to pay. These three must be linked together. There must be a link between productivity, the number in workforce, and what you are paying. So you have to have a link. You don't just overbloat your bureaucracy and suddenly say that you can't afford to pay minimum wage. It's not there. You don't go there to harass poverty. You go there to employ people to produce for your economy, and you have to reward them for what they have produced. So there is a sensibility around compromising looking at those three figures. They have to come together, linked to each other.
But then another thing is there are some states that are saying that, look, we cannot just afford that 30,000 naira. And then the question here will be, is it about this state governments not willing to pay, or really is it that they really do not have the means? So there's a thin line between not wanting to pay or not being able to pay. So what do you see happening in that case?
It could be both. It could be both. It may not be just either or. It could be both. The thing is, fortunately for the states, every month they go to Abuja to collect some FAC. And then the FAC, when they look at the breakdown, there is a minimum that is shared among the states, and then there is top-up based on all kinds of criteria. And then there are those who receive the derivation money of 13%. So it is anticipated that a minimum requirement to maintain the bureaucracy is catered for. So, but when a state does not want to look at the link between these three things, between the number of people they pour into the jobs, politics is not just about creating jobs in the bureaucracy. It's about running an economy. So you have to be mindful of the number of people that you are employing. If you overload the economy of the state with hundreds and hundreds of thousands of workers, and then you turn around and say that you haven't got enough money to pay them, it is really your problem. You need to have a sizable number of staff that are productive into such an extent that you are able to tie your resource, your income, your internally generated revenue to what you are able to pay, and then allowing some space for you to invest in capital projects and maintenance of schools and health and all of that. So they are there to manage a clear management and responsible management function. We'll be looking at the size of the bureaucracy. They'll be looking at what they call the size of governance.
But how easy will it be to achieve that, seeing that yearly we hear cases of thousands, several thousands of ghost workers in different states?
Now that comes to governance. It is governance. We know that the systems exist for us to match BVN to payroll management systems. And when you run both of them, then you can see the ghost workers. You see one person with 35 or 45 bank accounts collecting money from different ghost workers. That's what you see when you run the system. In the same way, if you run the internal revenue generation system, management information system, it gives you the information that you need to know about who is paying tax and who is not paying tax. And then you have, if you run an efficient voluntary self-assessment, then people are given the opportunity to assess themselves and pay what they think is reasonable. And over time, your tax officers will now come to interrogate them, maybe after 2 or 3 years, to have a look and say, well, gentlemen, look, just look at what you've got. Look at who this is paid. Same company like yours, the same size, just down the road, is paying 3 times your tax. The same company like yours in another zone, senatorial zone, is paying 2 times your tax. And then they will begin by admitting that they're sorry. And then next time they start paying the correct tax. So we got to have the system. You got to have the system for handling this and looking at this. If you don't, then you are just, it's money for the boys. And that's not acceptable.
Indeed. Well, Prof, let me also get your opinion on this. Recently, we saw queues return to some filling stations across the country. And that's because of that, the alarm that was raised that there was a possibility of fuel price increase. That's to 212 naira. Now, the Labour has said it will continue to kick against any increments, particularly based on the ongoing consultations that's still taking place with the federal government. But is it sustainable now for the federal government to keep paying fuel subsidy, billions of naira yearly? Is it something that can be sustained?
I thought we've closed that chapter.
Oh, well, it keeps coming up. You know, fuel subsidy. It doesn't seem like we'll stop talking about it soon.
That is a suicide. It's an economic suicide. You don't subsidize consumption, for goodness sake. You subsidize production. You should be talking to the government. The government should be talking about how do they get the 75 licenses that they have issued for modular oil refineries, private sector to come in. How do you get loans for them to start? If there's any subsidy that the government wants to give, it should be given to the people who are producing the refined products, and not to traders who are importing, draining our foreign exchange to import products that we produce. So that's not, it shouldn't actually feature in any discussion, to be honest with you, about talking about what.
But what people would say is, if the refineries are not working yet, then why would you decide to stop paying fuel subsidy? At least make this work first, and then we can think of other ways to proceed.
I don't think so. We have been trying to make it work for how many years? I think we should just forget these public refineries and just focus on the private refineries, and some of them are now coming on stream. If Dangote starts by the end of this year, it's going to have more fuel than the whole of the 4 government refineries put together. If the government wants to spend $2-3 billion trying to revive the dead and comatose public refinery, they should lend that money as loan to the private sector to bring 20 new refineries on stream. And that loan will be repaid and not consumed. If the government thinks that they have money to give a subsidy for importing fuel, take that money and loan it to the private sector to start refineries. And it is loan that you are going to recover. So I think this argument really gets on my nerves, because there's no place for this kind of argument in our economy, where we are hit by COVID. We have serious problem with revenue from oil. We have knock-on effect on forex instability. And then we have development challenges, infrastructure challenges. We have so much, and we are the poverty capital of the world. And people are still talking about fuel subsidy. I don't see where it enters into the equation at all.
Well, Professor Kenife, we thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us on the program. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Well, with that, we call it a wrap on this episode of Analysis. We thank you very much for watching. I'm Oyin Adekunle. I'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.